So did you notice the pumpkins out on the wall? What did you think? Yeah, those jack-o'-lanterns, I'll tell you, we've left them up a couple of days, and we want to thank particularly Joe and Pam Cochran and Melanie and Don Haycock and Maria and Tim Kolb for making this happen. I don't know if this is the most sort of buzz I've had since I've been here, except perhaps when we do the Blessing of the Hounds. People have loved having those pumpkins on the wall. So, you know, these pumpkins are a reminder that this seemingly secular Halloween holiday that we celebrate on the last day of October, Halloween is in fact deeply related to the religious holiday that we celebrate today, All Saints' Day. For All Hallows Evening is how we come to the word Halloween, and it was the beginning in Western Christianity of a 3-day celebration, that had traditionally been spent looking at those who had gone before, and it was Halloween, All Saints' Day when we celebrated the saints, and then the next day All Souls' Day. And it was linked to an ancient Celtic ritual that had something to do with the harvest. So, and it was also understood that on the eve of All Saints, before we celebrated all the saints, we needed to scare up all the spirits. And so that's our tradition of scary stories and horror movies and costumes. You know, the idea is to bring out the spirits. So the ghosts and the ghoulies and the goblins and the devil sort of prowls around that night, and we confront the forces of evil the next day with the forces of good. And so, before I turn to All Saints' Day, let me tell you a Halloween joke. There was this minister in a church, and one of his parishioners was this very grumpy man who came faithfully every Sunday, but sat in the pew with his arms crossed across his chest and with a really sort of frown and scowl. He was there every week. And so the Sunday before Halloween, the minister decided to do something rather dramatic. And so at the time of the sermon, he went back into the sacristy and he got all dressed up, and he had worked it out with the choir master. So all of a sudden they had this organ music that was sort of like, da 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 da, you know, and this smoke machine sent all this smoke up. And sure enough, the minister comes out dressed as the devil, you know, and so in his best, so he comes out with all of this, and the people are so spooked that they stand up, most of them, some of them scream, and they sort of run out and leave. All except Bob, the parishioner who comes every week with his hands across his chest and a scowl on his face. And so the minister believing that he's really scary, and using his best satanic voice and staying in character the whole time, walks up to Bob and says, "So do you know who I am?" You know, and Bob says, "Yes, sir, I do." And then he says, "Aren't you afraid of me?" And the minister, and Bob says, "No." By then the minister's very curious and is having trouble staying in character, but finally says, "And why not?" And Bob says, "Because I've been married to your sister for 40 years. So All Saints' Day, a day, fortunately for us, a day for sinners and saints, and we're not scared of either one, nor is God. But it is a day for those of us, any of us, who live the life that includes the kinds of fears that we encounter every day. I don't know about you, but I actually was speaking with a fellow last night who works inside the White House as a general counsel, and his subject is Ebola. You know, and so once again, not only does it bombard me in the news, but that whole part of Ebola coming to this country and the scare we all feel. I mean, our common existence, no matter whether we live in this wonderful country or we live in some really embattled Middle Eastern country or whatever, all of human life includes a kind of scariness. For some people who live in the developing world, they're scared because their existence includes trying to scrounge for food every day. So, and this day that we come together, All Saints' Day, is a chance for us as Christians to claim an alternative reality to what we encounter and see in the world, a reality of goodness and kindness and abundance and love that is all possible with God's help. Quite often, we do not know if we are saints or sinners, perhaps both, or who the saints and sinners are among us. And we can be surprised. There was this priest in a congregation who told the congregation that the budget had was coming up short, and so he was going to take a collection that day to make up for the shortfall. And as an incentive, he told the congregation that whoever put the most money in the plate that morning could pick 3 hymns. And so the ushers came down and they got the offering plates and they passed them around, and then they were brought back up to the priest, and he looked down in those offering plates and he saw a $100 bill. And he was overjoyed with that kind of generosity and started thanking everybody, but he wanted to know who it was who had put that $100 bill in, and asked if the person would identify themselves by raising their hand. And so the elderly woman in the back raised her hand. She was the quiet, presumed resident saint of the congregation, and she slowly raised her hand, and he urged her to come up to the front, and she got her cane and she walked up to the front with him, and the priest made a big deal of her gift, and she was shy and really embarrassed to be right up there and up front. And finally he said to her, "And now you get to choose 3 hymns." And all of a sudden this shy little woman bent over and with her cane got this look on her face. Her eyes brightened and she looked out over the congregation, and she found the 3 handsomest men in the congregation, and she said, "I want him and him and him." Who would have thought that poor woman on a cane still had it in her? So this day we remember folks from our past. We receive advice from these lessons for living in the present and living into the unlimited possibility of a world wherein God's values prevail in the world, a world that sorely needs a different way of living. And we set our sights on a future that is even now unfolding before us, and we believe as Christians right here in this room. So, if you were to come to the 10 o'clock service, we would have opened the service with that wonderful hymn, "For All the Saints Who From Their Labors Rest." And it may be that we'll have a chance to close this service with that hymn. But if you look at all 3 verses and you look at these lessons we've had today from Revelation, from one of John's letters and also from Matthew, we really do. It gives us a lot of hints about the past, present, and future that collapse in on this day and make us all intimate with God and in contact with those who have gone before and who will follow us. Now, as a community of Christians, our past reminds us, as children of God, of all those upon whose shoulders we stand in our striving to love God and Jesus Christ. So bear with me for a minute while we stroll down memory lane, and each of us will have different memories. But I want you to remember with me, if you will, who first spoke up to you in a way that the gospel came alive. Who prayed with you in a way that made sense and made God more accessible. Who forgave you so frequently that you finally had to forgive yourself. Who persevered in loving you when you least deserved it. Who tolerated you when you were crazy on your way to sanity. Or who held you firmly and lovingly when you were flailing and everything seemed to be falling apart. I believe we all sit here this morning because someone, often many other people, ordinary saints, have chosen this way before us, the way of Christ, the way of loving and forgiving, and have passed it on to us. And as Christians, we are called to live fearlessly and courageously in the present. And so we are implored to turn to God and to ask for help, for guidance through prayer, to persevere in this life that we have chosen, acknowledging the fierce struggle we have in attempting many days to simply live faithfully. We work to understand not the values of the world that are all around us, but the values of God, and to live into them. Matthew's gospel today reminds us that in the present, in this very moment, in God's eyes, we are blessed if we are poor in spirit, humbled. We are blessed if we are mourning or meek. We are blessed if we are hungry and thirsty for justice. We're blessed if merciful and pure in heart. Blessed when we dare to make peace and when we've been reviled or persecuted for the sake of loving and forgiving. That is when God is blessing us. That is the world of God's kingdom of heaven. God's values fly in the face of what others might tell us, or the little voices in our own heads that whisper in our ears. And I think it is hard for us in the present, is it not, to trust our ultimate value, to trust that it resides in God and that God loves us no matter what. I think it's difficult for us to know how important we are because we belong to God, and not because we've accomplished something, or we're famous, or because of our cunning or our forcefulness, our political skill. Not because we've achieved some certain income level or job status, or bought a house in a certain neighborhood, or been educated in the finest ways. It's hard for us to accept that we are simply important to God because we belong to God. And especially to know that we are really important to God when we are overwhelmed or broken, too sad for words, or ravenous in our search for sustenance or a chance to earn a living. We are so precious to God when we are willing to stand in the gap between enemy sides while we seek peace, and when we side with the poor and the downtrodden, and when all is lost and the world cannot stop hating us and may even want to kill us for trying to do God. We are blessed. So this celebration of All Saints' Day truly is not for the faint-hearted, but for the hearty and the wholehearted, who want to live fearlessly in the present, bringing the kingdom of God. This day gives me strength when I contemplate that. It reminds me of a bumper sticker given to me a few years back. I do not intend to tiptoe through life, only to arrive safely at death. And that is much like the Christian call, risking in the present on behalf of the gospel. And at the heart of Christianity, in fact, is our ultimate confidence in the future that is already and will continue to unfold before us. Our confidence that those we have loved here on this earth already dwell in the nearer presence of God, and that we do not have to worry that we will not enjoy that dimension near God ourselves. All Saints' Day gives us a vision of a bright and glorious moment when the prevailing power of God, working in us and through us and all around us, will literally block out the darkness, halt all grief, silence all other competing voices with a resounding chorus so subtle and beautiful that it will bring tears of gratitude to our eyes, because in that moment wherein we are given the chance to glimpse eternity and realize that we are deeply loved forever, we will forget all the hardship and the struggle. We will shed tears, not of sorrow, but tears of joy, because we had been broken wide open, and we will be deeply grateful that we have ever lived long enough to hear such a chorus or see such a sight. That's the dimension that we are invited into today here at All Saints. Joe will read the names of many people, some who have died in this last year and others who have been commended to us by parishioners. We invite you to add the names, either silently or aloud, of other loved ones that we expect are dwelling in a balcony here and are a part of that chorus that, when we really listen, can change our lives. And oh, by the way, we think we might keep putting the pumpkins out there on the wall. We think it's good to expand this holy day to 3 days and to keep listening and contemplating the way the power of God overcomes evil and the ways we are connected with those who have gone before. Amen.